Hey, what's up, guys? It's DarkArmedDuelist, and today doing an Ancient Gear deck profile. So I'm really excited to you guys because this deck is an amazing machine OTK deck that can summon out one of the most powerful fusion monsters ever created, the Chaos Ancient Gear Giant, which can pretty much single-handedly OTK your opponent. So without further ado, guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you become part of the notification squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name description in a single video, getting assigned cards in the mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month you're a patron, along with test hands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're playing a single copy of Ancient Gear Golem. This card is a great boss monster for the deck that does piercing damage when it attacks, and it is super easy to summon off of cards like your Ancient Gear Catapult, which is a really amazing card for this deck as well to get out this insanely powerful boss monster. We then play two copies of Ancient Gear Reactor Dragon. This card is a super easy to summon boss monster that has the ability, if this card attacked, you can destroy a spell or trap on the field, which is a really awesome effect. It's also really easy to summon off of cards like your Gear Town and your Ancient Gear Catapult. We then play three copies of Ancient Gear Wyvern, which is pretty much the Stratos of the deck, that has the ability, if this card is normal or special summon, you can add an Ancient Gear card from your deck to your hand, except another copy of itself, which is a really good effect. But it also has the ability that you cannot set cards for the rest of the turn, which is an okay effect because you don't really set that many cards in this deck anyways. We then play three copies of Ancient Gear Hunting Hound. Hunting Hound is a walking polymerization, which is a really awesome thing for this deck to have, that has the ability, if this card is normal summon, you do 600 points of damage to your opponent, and then it also has that poly effect that lets you once per turn fusion summon one Ancient Gear fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as fusion materials. We then play two copies of Ancient Gear Frame. This is a really good 2-of in the deck that helps as a combo piece for this deck, and it's just a really good card because it has the ability that you can discard one card to add an Ancient Gear Golem or a spell or trap that specifically lists Ancient Gear Golem in its text from your deck to your hand, which is the big effect that you're going to be using with this card. We then play a single copy of Ancient Gear Box, which is a pretty good searcher in this deck as it has the ability, if this card is added from your deck or graveyard to your hand except by drawing it, then you can add an Earth Machine type monster that with 500 attack or defense from your deck to your hand, which is a pretty good effect because we have a couple of targets in the deck like your Ancient Gear Frame that has 500 defense, which is a really good search for this deck. We then play three copies of Super Express Train. This is a really good special summon to your side of the field because it works really well with the Ancient Gear package because it has the ability that all monsters you control are Earth Machines. Then you can special summon this card from your hand, and then during the end phase, if this card is sent to the graveyard because it was sent there this turn, then you can target a machine monster in the graveyard and add it back to your hand, which is really good to have a card that can grab some of your machine monsters back from the grave. We then played two copies of Heavy Freight Train DarkArmedAlliance. DarkArmedAlliance is a good 2-of as well because it has the ability that if an Earth Machine type monster is normal or special summon, you can special summon this card from your hand, but its original attack and defense becomes half. And you can only use each effect this card once per turn, and if this card is detached as an XZ material and sent to the graveyard to activate a monster's effect, then you can target a card your opponent controls and destroy it, which is a pretty good effect to be able to do. We then play two copies of Infinitrack Anchor Drill. I like this card as a 2-of in this deck because it helps me go into some of my link monsters because it has the ability, if this card is normal or special summon, then you can special summon an Earth Machine monster from your hand in defense position except another copy of itself, which is a really awesome effect for this deck to have. We then play three copies of Psyframe Gear Gamma, which is going to protect a lot of our cards from hand traps while also summoning out two monsters to our side of the field that we can use for link material, because when you use Psyframe Gear Gamma, you'll special summon this card to your side of the field while also special summoning out a copy of Driver, which we play as a 1-of in this deck, which is going to help us go into some level 8 synchros or into some link plays, which is a really awesome thing to protect us from some of our opponent's cards. So that's it for the monsters, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Harpy's Feather Duster. Harpy's Feather Duster is a really good 1-of in this deck because it is an OTK deck. You don't want to have to deal with your opponent's back row, and this is just a really good 1-of in this deck. We play a single copy of Overload Fusion. Overload Fusion is a really good fusion spell that basically has the ability that you can remove from play cards to summon out a machine dark monster from your extra deck that's a fusion monster by banishing the materials from the graveyard, which this card is an absolutely crazy awesome fusion spell to summon out cards like your Chaos Ancient Gear Giant. We then play 2 copies of Ancient Gear Fusion, which is the N-Archetype Fusion spell, which is just a really good card because it has the ability to fusion summon an Ancient Gear Fusion monster from your extra deck using monsters from your hand or field as material. And if you use Ancient Gear Golem or Ancient Gear Golem Ultimate Pound you control as a fusion material, you can also use monsters from your deck as material, which is really an important thing for this deck to be able to do, and why it's so easy with all of the cards that we have in this deck to be able to summon out Ancient Gear Golem to our side of the field. We then play 2 copies of Foolish Burial Goods. Foolish Burial Goods is a good 2-of in this deck because it helps us send cards that are spells and traps to the graveyard, like our Ancient Gear Catapult, which we play as a 3-of. Ancient Gear Catapult is really good in combo with Foolish Burial Goods because it gives us a token and it has a really good effect that basically while you control no monsters, you can target one face-up card that you control and destroy it. And if you do, special summon an Ancient Gear monster from your deck, ignoring its summoning conditions. And you can banish this card from your graveyard and then target a face-up card that you control and destroy it. And if you do, you get to special summon an Ancient Gear token, Machine, Earth, level 1, 0 attack and 0 defense to your side of the field, and you can only use one effect of this card per turn. You can't actually use both. But this card is really good with Foolish Burial Goods because it can get a token on your side of the field while also popping a card like Gear Town on your side of the field to get you 2 monsters to be able to link summon into our Ancient Gear Ballista in the extra deck. We then play 3 copies of Gear Town. Gear Town is a really good card to destroy with your copy of Catapult because it has the ability that when this card is destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon an Ancient Gear monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard. Now, something to keep in mind about this card is it doesn't ignore the summoning condition, so you can't special summon Ancient Gear Golem with this card because Ancient Gear Golem specifically says that it cannot be special summoned, which is why you use Catapult to summon out your Ancient Gear Golem because it ignores its summoning conditions. We then play 3 copies of Ancient Gear Fortress. This is a really good 3-of in the deck that has the ability that during the turn they were normal or special summon, your opponent cannot target Ancient Gear monsters you control with card effects, and they cannot be destroyed by your opponent's card effects either. And then your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to the activation of an Ancient Gear card's effect. And if this card is destroyed in the spell and trap card zone, you can special summon an Ancient Gear monster from your hand or graveyard, and also you can't special summon monsters for the rest of the turn except Ancient Gear monsters, which is not that big of a deal because the majority of the time that's what we're going to be summoning. We then play 3 copies of Urgent Schedule. Urgent Schedule is really good in this deck because it helps you out summoning out all sorts of different Earth machines to your side of the field so you can link summon and link climb. It's a really good card to set to your side of the field, and one of the only cards you're actually going to set to the field because it's a quick play spell, and it's just a really good overall card. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing 2 copies of Chaos Ancient Gear Giant. This card is a 1-card OTK, depending on what your opponent has on the field, with 4,500 attack. It does require 4 Ancient Gear monsters to fusion summon in this card, but it doesn't require a specific one, so it can be any 4 Ancient Gears to summon out this card. It has a really amazing effect that it must be fusion summoned, it cannot be special summoned by other ways, and it's unaffected by spell and trap effects, and your opponent's monsters cannot activate their effects during the battle phase. And this card can attack all monsters your opponent controls once each, and if this card attacks a defense mission monster, inflict piercing damage to your opponent, which is an insanely powerful effect, and it's just an overall fantastic card. We then play 2 copies of Ancient Gear Howitzer. Howitzer is a good card that basically just requires 2 Ancient Gear monsters to summon this card, and has the ability it's unaffected by other cards' effects. And then during the main phase, you can inflict 1,000 points of damage to your opponent, and you can only use each of the effects of this card once per turn. If this card is destroyed by battle and sent to the graveyard, you can special summon an Ancient Gear monster from your deck, ignoring its summoning conditions, like Ancient Gear Golem or Ancient Gear Reactor Dragon. We then play a single copy of Megaton Golem. Megaton Golem is a good OTK piece as well because it can attack multiple times, and it's just a really good card overall. We then play a single copy of Ultimate Ancient Gear Golem. This card is insanely good, especially comboed with the Megaton, because these two work together really well. And the copy of your Ultimate Ancient Gear Golem also does piercing damage, and it's a 4,500 attack point monster that requires 1 less material than your copy of Chaos Ancient Gear Giant to summon, but it does specifically require your Ancient Gear Golem to fusion summon into this card. We then play a single copy of Psyframe Lord Omega. Omega is a really good card to rip cards out of your opponent's hand if they're going to be able to use a hand trap where you have Gamut in the hand. You can just immediately summon Gamut and Driver to your field and then Synchro Summon into this card and then rip an additional card out of their hand where they have now like 3 cards and they've used 2 cards to be able to do nothing while you've got a really good boss monster on your field, which is a really good thing for us. We then play a single copy of Scrap Dragon. Scrap Dragon is a kind of neat tech for this deck because it has the ability that you can target a card on your field and a card on your opponent's field and pop each card, which is a really good effect for this deck because basically you're going to be able to pop cards like Gear Town, your copies of your Fortress, or a set copy of Catapult on your side of the field to be able to use this card to be able to also pop a card on your opponent's field. But the way you're going to actually summon this card is with your copy of Gamma and Driver. We then play a single copy of Giganta X because it gives us searches from the deck of Earth Machine monsters that are level 4 or lower, which is a pretty good effect to be able to search Gearbox from deck to hand and then get an additional search, which is pretty good. Play a single copy of Gustav Max because Gustav Max is pretty easy to summon in this deck with the trains that we play in this build, while also doing 2,000 points of burn damage to your opponent that can close out games, which is really nice. 1 copy of Juggernaut Libby, which is a 4k attack point monster and also gives us a 4 material Zeus because you basically make your copy of Rail Cannon, immediately go to Juggernaut Libby, attack with the Juggernaut Libby at 4k, and then make a Zeus during main 2 to have a 4 material Zeus, which is a really awesome thing for this deck. We then play 2 copies of Ancient Gear Ballista, which is a really good link monster for Ancient Gears because it has the ability, if this card is link summoned, you can add a Ancient Gear monster or a Gear Town from your deck to your hand, and then you can target a spell or trap that you control and one face a card your opponent controls and destroy them, and that monster that then it has the ability to change that opponent's monster to 0 attack and defense until the end of the turn, which can help you OTK, which is a really awesome thing. We then play a single copy of Anaconda because you can use it with Overload Fusion, which is a really awesome thing to be able to do, to use this card to go into your copy of Chaos Ancient Gear Giant. So that's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's a really fun deck to play. It's super easy to play because basically you're trying to go for your copy of Chaos Ancient Gear Giant as quickly as possible and swarm the field with all sorts of Ancient Gear monsters to just basically OTK your opponent. And I always love playing Ancient Gears because Ancient Gear Golem is one of my favorite cards. So anyways, guys, this is DarkArmedDuelist. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell next so you can become part of the notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.